Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We've got Jide Ogunsanwo, our data analyst. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning, Chairman.
Well, Jide, you know, we had heard people say that, look, they've looked at the manifestos of these parties, the two leading ones, and they are not satisfied with what they've seen in terms of their approach to tackle security headlong. Do you see the same thing when you look through it?
Today we are faced with a bigger challenge. You know, over 6 decades ago, Albert Einstein had given us the solution to the problems of Boko Haram. He had given us the solutions to the problem of terrorism. In his words, we cannot solve problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And so if Albert Einstein were with us today, here's what he will recommend. That when you have a security problem, sometimes it is not a security solution that will solve it.
What can it be?
A development solution. And I'll explain more about the development solution later on. But the first is, we're at a point, just before we look into their manifestos and look at what they've said about security, we're at that point in our history where the question we need to first of all ask ourselves is, Chamberlain, are we a nation at war, or are we just fighting insurgents? And until we properly define the problem, it will be hard, Gimba, to find a solution. And so let's try and first of all answer that question together before we then look at their manifestos and what it says about security. Are we a nation at war? The next level document of the APC provides some information. The APC released 2 documents. There's the abridged 14-page version and there's a 28-page version. Let's start with the 28-page version. Pick up that document. Move to page 4. The first line says, as at May 2015, we were a nation at war. The first line of the statement under the background. As at May 2015, we were a nation at war. So that is established. Pick up the abridged version, and it then lets you and provides the answer of, are we still at war? And on that document, page 3, we have that answer. It says, we were a nation at war. And so if you put these 2 documents together, the conclusion is, based on the APC's next level document, is that as of May 2015, we were at war, but we are no longer at war. So here's what it means. That sometime between May 2015 and today, the war ended. So we need to now find and ask the federal government, when did the war end? Because based on those 2 documents, we've established that when the government came in, there was an admittance of war. And within a second document as well, there's an admittance of we are no longer at war. So clearly in between, the war ended. Well, here's what you find interesting, Chamberlain. When President Jonathan declared a state of emergency, May 14, 2013, we're just 200 days away from 5 years. May 14, 2013. Here's what the Global Terrorism Database tells us. That within those first 5 months, January to May 2013, total deaths due to terrorism, 650. The same Global Terrorism Database tells us that within the first 5 months of last year, total deaths due to terrorism was more than 650. And so if you look at those comparative periods, the tension in the land when President Jonathan declared war and the tension in the land in the first 5 months of last year, we can see there were more deaths within those periods. Does that mean the Nigerian army and the soldiers are not making progress? Oh, they are making progress. If we look at it year on year, we can see that there's been a steady decline of deaths due to terrorism.
But it shot up in 2017, November.
No, that's if we look at month on month for last year. The first is, let's look at how it has declined from 2014. We see that there's been a decline from 2014, 15, 16, year on year. So we see a year on year decline. which lets us know that, yes, the commander-in-chief has made progress. Yes,
Because the next level document says, according to the same terrorism index, that it had dropped by 80% in 2016.
No, we don't have sufficient evidence to say it had dropped by 80%. The evidence shows that there's been a decline year on year. However, is there still tension in the land? Yes, there is, because the level of deaths recorded in the first 5 months of last year due to terrorism is higher than, or was higher than the number of deaths recorded due to terrorism in those first 5 months of the year in 2013 when President Jonathan declared the war on terrorism. And so today, Chamberlain, that answer, are we still at war? Yes, the APC-led federal government has said we're no longer at war and we're fighting insurgents. But the evidence shows that there are still a lot of people and families dying, and indeed soldiers dying because of terrorism. And so I'm still confused as to the answer on, are we at war? Are we at a state of emergency? And even though I don't have firm answers on those two questions, I'll tell you what I have firm answers on. And we're at a state of chaos. Can I prove it? Yes, I can. And I'll explain what I mean by we're at a state of chaos. Quickly turn into the Constitution. Section 14, subsection 2B, tells us specifically the primary purpose of government. What was it? Security and welfare. Security comes first, even before welfare.
Okay, we'll come back to that when we'll come back in a moment. And look at some more figures according to the killings by terrorists in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. And then they're going through this stats that you have. I mean, when that next level document says, and they quoted the Global Terrorism Index, saying that the death by terrorists had reduced, particularly in Nigeria, by 80% in 2016. Isn't that correct? Because if you look through 2014, I mean, the figures you have here, about 7,000, and 2016, about 2,000.
Yeah, so that's, it's reasonable. It's, we wouldn't say it's completely right, but here's what it is. Have we made significant progress? Yes. 2014, over 7,000 deaths due to terrorism. Right now, less than 2,000 deaths due to terrorism. So we can look at the accuracy of those numbers and give it a check. Or is the mood in the country about the same? Pretty much. And here's why, and I also quote the Global Terrorism Index. The first 5 months, 2013, that led to that declaration of state of emergency. Total deaths in the first 5 months, 650. Last year, total deaths due to terrorism in the first 5 months, above those numbers. And so, on a year-on-year basis, we've made significant progress in the number of deaths due to terrorism, but in the mood and the agitation of families and soldiers and the number of people still dying, that still needs to significantly go down. But here's the concern that we have today. Primary purpose of government based on the Constitution, Section 14, security and welfare. Even though corruption is important, did corruption come in Section 15? No, it didn't. Section 16, corruption? No. Section 17, corruption? No. First mention of corruption, Section 88. And so we need to focus more on first, security and welfare. But let's look at those manifestos. First, the manifesto of the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku. In his manifesto, he talked about 4 priorities: jobs, and he has a detailed plan on jobs. His priorities as well: human capital development, reasonable. His priority: poverty eradication and infrastructure. And so even though this presidential candidate has brought out a detailed plan, the Constitution says that the primary purpose of government is first, security. And so in the PDP's manifesto, security doesn't play a prominent role. Now let's look at the APC's manifesto. Now if you pick up that elaborate document, what is the first program that you find? The economy, not security. What is the second program and the second title that you find? Security, no.
So you can't call
social,
it economic security.
No, we can't. The first in the APC document is economy. The second, social investment. The third, corruption. The fourth, infrastructure. And security comes fifth. And so we've seen 2 documents that are skewed.
So you like to see security come first. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters to you the order of appearance.
Well, the order of appearance matters because it shows the priority and those that are preparing the document, and it shows the level of thinking. Again, the primary purpose of government, based on the Constitution, security first. And in the fight against Boko Haram, even though the military are making a lot of efforts, it is not just about a military solution. We should look at the development solution, looking at the impact of unemployment on insecurity, looking at the impact of weak infrastructure on insecurity. In final analysis, Chamberlain, Boko Haram in real terms is just a shadow. You can't kill a shadow. You can only move the course of the shadow away.
Well, the thing is, I mean, even if it's 1 or 2 people that die, it matters to the country, and so it's important that we also emphasize that. Well, thank you for coming on this morning. Jide Ogunsanwo, our data and information analyst. That is the show this week. This week. Thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Gimba Umar.
I'm Neo Taigwe. Enjoy your day.
Have a great weekend. I'm Ajuri Ingilale.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.